Did you know Walmart is one of the most common places for paranormal encounters? Think about it. Those endless aisles, flickering fluorescent lights, and the sheer volume of people passing through. It creates a breeding ground for strange and unsettling energy. Tonight, we delve into the heart of the retail abyss, exploring 4 real horror stories that took place in the most unassuming of places, Walmart. Because sometimes the most frightening thing isn't what goes bump in the night, but what silently watches you from the shadows of the everyday. Are you brave enough to step inside? Our first story takes us to a bustling Walmart in the heartland of America. Picture this July 4th weekend. The store is packed with shoppers stocking up for barbecues and fireworks. Among them is a young mother named Sarah, navigating the crowded aisles with her 2 children in tow.
She's looking for swimsuits, her laughter echoing as her kids chase each other around the clothing racks.
Sarah turns for a moment, distracted by a sale on patio furniture, her eyes scanning the brightly colored displays. When she turns back, her heart seizes. Her children are gone. Vanished. Panic claws at her throat, a silent scream building in her chest.
Frantic Sarah alerts store security, her voice cracking as she describes her missing children.
Security cameras are checked, announcements blare over the loudspeaker, but it's as if they've vanished into thin air. Days turn into weeks, the investigation dragging on with no leads, no witnesses, no trace of Sarah's children. Some speculate about a hidden abductor, snatching the children in a moment of chaos. The mystery remains unsolved, a chilling tale whispered among locals, a warning that even in the most familiar of places, darkness can lurk, waiting to claim the unsuspecting. Our next story takes us to the dead of night, the fluorescent lights of a rural Walmart casting long, eerie shadows across the mostly empty aisles. The store, usually bustling with activity, now stands silent and still, an almost ghostly presence in the quiet town. A lone employee, Michael, is stocking shelves in the electronics department. The rhythmic beeps of the scanners his only company. The hum of the refrigerators and the occasional creak of the building settling are the only other sounds breaking the silence.
It's a night like any other, or so he thinks. The routine is almost comforting in its predictability, a stark contrast to the unsettling feeling that begins to creep in. As Michael works, he notices a strange chill in the air, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. It's as if the temperature has dropped suddenly, an unnatural cold that seems to seep into his bones. He dismisses it as the air conditioning, but the feeling persists, growing stronger with each passing moment. The chill is now accompanied by a sense of being watched, an invisible presence lurking just out of sight.
Then he hears it, a faint whisper, barely audible above the hum of the refrigerators. The sound is so soft it could almost be mistaken for the wind, but there's an unmistakable human quality to it. He pauses, holding his breath, straining to identify the source. The store seems to hold its breath with him, the silence growing heavier, more oppressive. The whispers come again, closer this time, seeming to emanate from the wall of televisions behind him. The screens flicker, casting eerie shadows that dance across the floor. A wave of goosebumps erupts on his arms. The sensation is so intense it feels like tiny needles pricking his skin. He spins around, heart pounding, expecting to see a customer, but the aisle is empty. The emptiness is almost mocking, as if the store itself is playing tricks on him. He resumes his work, his mind racing, trying to rationalize the whispers. Maybe it's just his imagination, he tells himself, a trick of the mind in the quiet of the night. As he walks down the aisle, the whispers intensify, morphing into distorted murmurs, cold and menacing. They seem to echo off the walls, surrounding him, closing in. He glances over his shoulder, his pulse quickening. The feeling of being watched is now overwhelming, a suffocating presence that makes it hard to breathe. A tall, shadowy figure seems to flicker at the edge of his vision, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. The figure is indistinct, more a suggestion of a shape than a solid form, but its presence is undeniable. He never returns to that Walmart, forever haunted by the chilling encounter in the electronics aisle, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurs beneath the flickering fluorescent lights. The memory of that night lingers, a ghostly whisper in the back of his mind, a reminder of the unknown lurking in the most mundane places. Our next tale takes us to a Walmart in a small town, a place where everyone knows everyone else's name, and secrets are hard to keep. This Walmart, nestled in the heart of the community, is more than just a store. It's a gathering place, a hub of daily life. But there's one secret that has haunted this particular Walmart for years, a secret that sends shivers down the spines of employees and shoppers alike. It's a tale that has woven itself into the fabric of the town's folklore. It's the story of the Phantom of the Toy Aisle, a ghostly presence that has become the stuff of legend.
The first sighting occurred on Halloween night, a time when the veil between the living and the dead is said to be thinnest. A young cashier, closing up for the evening, noticed a strange figure out of the corner of her eye. She had been working late, the store eerily quiet, the only sounds the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant rustle of merchandise. She turned to look, her heart leaping into her throat, her breath catching as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Standing at the end of the toy aisle was a translucent figure, a young woman in a tattered white dress, her face pale and drawn. The ghostly figure seemed to shimmer in the dim light, an ethereal presence that defied explanation. She seemed to float above the ground, her sorrowful eyes fixed on the cashier, as if pleading for something, though what it was, no one could say. Terrified, the cashier fled, the image of the ghostly woman seared into her memory, a haunting vision that would stay with her forever.
Word spread quickly through the small town, whispers of the ghostly apparition spreading like wildfire. The story took on a life of its own, each retelling adding new details, new layers of fear. Some dismissed it as a Halloween prank, a figment of an overactive imagination, but others weren't so sure. The sightings continued, each one more chilling than the last. More sightings were reported, always in the same aisle, always described as a young woman in white, her eyes filled with a deep, unending sadness. It was as if she was searching for something or someone lost to her in the mists of time.
One evening, a group of teenagers dared each other to spend 5 minutes alone in the toy aisle after closing time. They had heard the stories, but they were skeptical, convinced it was all just a myth. They giggled nervously, their bravado a thin veil for their growing fear. The store, usually bustling with activity, was now a silent, foreboding place. As the last employee locked the front doors, the teenagers made their way to the infamous aisle, their laughter dying in their throats as they entered the darkened section of the store. The air seemed to thicken, the shadows lengthening ominously. The air grew heavy, the temperature noticeably colder, a chill that seemed to seep into their very bones. The teenagers huddled together, their eyes darting about, searching for any sign of the ghostly woman. Every creak, every rustle sent their hearts racing.
Suddenly, a ball rolled down the aisle, coming to a stop at their feet. It was a simple child's toy, but in that moment it was the most terrifying thing they had ever seen. The teenagers froze, their blood turning to ice, their minds racing with fear and confusion. One by one, they turned to look at the end of the aisle, their eyes widening in horror as they saw the ghostly figure standing there, her sorrowful eyes fixed on them. The story of the Phantom of the Toy Aisle solidified, becoming a chilling legend whispered among the townspeople, a warning to those who dared to enter the toy aisle after dark. It was a tale that would be told and retold each time with a shiver and a glance over the shoulder, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed. Our final story, and perhaps the most disturbing, takes us to a sprawling Walmart supercenter on the outskirts of a bustling city. This is a place where people come to shop for everyday items, never expecting anything out of the ordinary to happen. The story begins on a stormy night, the wind howling outside as rain lashes against the windows of the store. The weather outside is fierce, creating an eerie atmosphere inside the store. Inside, a young woman named Jessica is rushing through her shopping list, eager to get home before the storm worsens. She moves quickly, her mind focused on the tasks at hand, unaware of the unsettling events about to unfold. She navigates her cart through the crowded aisles, gathering the last of her items. The store is busy, filled with other shoppers trying to finish their errands before the weather gets any worse.
As she rounds the corner into the garden center, she notices a man standing by the rows of potted plants. He seems out of place, his presence unsettling in the otherwise mundane setting. He's tall and imposing, wearing a dark hooded jacket that obscures his face. The way he stands there, motionless, sends a chill down her spine. Something about him feels off, setting off alarm bells in Jessica's mind. She can't shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong. She tries to ignore him, focusing on picking out a bag of fertilizer. She tells herself that she's just being paranoid, that there's no real danger. But she can feel his eyes on her, watching her every move. The sensation is unnerving, making her skin crawl. A shiver runs down her spine. She can't help but glance over her shoulder, her heart racing. She quickly throws the fertilizer into her cart and hurries away, her heart pounding in her chest. She just wants to get out of there as quickly as possible.
As she makes her way through the gardening tools, she hears the distinct sound of footsteps behind her, slow and deliberate, matching her pace. The sound sends a wave of fear through her. She glances over her shoulder and sees the man, still shrouded in shadow, following her. His presence is menacing, a dark figure in the dimly lit aisle. Fear grips her, constricting her breath. She feels like she's being hunted, the prey in a deadly game. She quickens her pace, her cart rattling over the concrete floor. The noise seems to echo in the empty aisles, amplifying her fear. The footsteps behind her accelerate, keeping pace with her. She can hear them getting closer, the sound filling her with dread. Jessica's mind races, desperately searching for an escape. She feels trapped, the walls closing in around her.
She rounds another corner, her heart pounding in her ears, and risks another glance over her shoulder. The man is gone. Relief washes over her, but it is short-lived. Relief washes over her, only to be replaced by a new wave of terror as she realizes she's now alone in the deserted back aisle of the garden center, surrounded by towering shelves of gardening supplies, her senses on high alert. The silence is deafening, every creak and rustle magnified. She can feel her pulse throbbing in her temples. The fear is almost overwhelming, making it hard to think clearly. Suddenly, she hears it again, the heavy thud of footsteps approaching, closer this time, echoing off the metal shelves. The sound is unmistakable, sending a jolt of terror through her.
She spins around, her eyes scanning the darkened aisles, her breath catching in her throat. The fear is palpable, a tangible presence in the air. She bursts through the emergency exit at the back of the store, the storm outside a welcome alternative to the terror that lurks within the aisles of Walmart. The rain and wind are a relief, washing away the fear that had gripped her inside. 4 stories? 4 chilling reminders that even in the brightly lit aisles of a familiar store, darkness can lurk. So the next time you find yourself wandering the aisles of your local Walmart, take a moment to listen, because you never know what might be lurking just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself. And if you're brave enough, check out our next video where we explore even more real-life horror stories that will leave you sleeping with the lights on.